So here is a summary of the 8 things you can do tomorrow. Use good color contrast, add closed captions, make bigger buttons, stop using sun-spaced language, allow enough time, use inclusive imagery, make text readable, and learn more. So we have time left. So we did this on purpose to allow time for questions. And I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to pull up examples where I can. Yes, and number 9, thank you. Let your learners know about the keyboard shortcuts already built into the software. Yes, love it. So let me field questions. I'm going to leave the list up in case I want to screen share something to answer one of your questions.
Sure. I see Abby.
Okay. We have Abby.
Hi. Okay. So as far as understanding some of the storyline ways in which we can engage learners, there's some talk from what I understand about how certain features are not accessible. For example, dragging and dropping, or sometimes, like I was thinking about the hotspots. Sometimes they're like really too small to click on and it's hard to expand them. I guess from your experience, or can you share a little bit about the do's and don'ts? Because I know that you've referenced storyline quite a bit, for storyline in particular.
Yeah, certainly. So in most software, drag and drop questions are not accessible because it involves vision and involves a mouse. So therefore, we've stripped out all the fun and all e-learning, right? That's what a lot of people think. Let me, if you can bear with me for just a minute, let me find an example that where I have a before and after of a non-accessible version and an accessible version. If you bear with me for just a second, and I will find it. Maybe I won't find it fast enough.
No, that's a good point though too, is like, how do you make those things accessible, knowing that they're not? Yeah, I appreciate that.
Right. So while I'm looking, let me put it on the screen so I can at least look at you while I'm looking for this. So one of the things that is helpful to remember is to focus on what you can do instead of what you can't do. I have had new developers and writers work for us who've never done accessible before, and they just shut down. They're like, oh, I can't do these colors and I can't do a drag and drop. And all of a sudden, all of the creativity leaches from their body. And, you know, a lot of people think you can't use audio or you can't use video. You can do all of those things. You cannot do a drag and drop in most tools. But how many things in your life have you learned without dragging and dropping anything? I mean, like, is that the hill we're going to die on? Is that worth inequality? Really? Are they that important? But we can still be creative. There's nothing accessible or inaccessible about a great story. There's nothing accessible or inaccessible about a great helpful scenario. You know, I can do branching, I can do all kinds of stuff, but no, I can't have them drag something. Okay, well, if that's the only way I can make something interesting, shame on me. Right? It's a crutch. Okay, so there's my little, I'm getting a little soapboxy again here. So I'm almost to where I want to be. I think it is this PowerPoint right here. Let me, I have the before and after. This one only has the before. I don't want to make you keep looking. Okay, so this is from a course that I did years ago. It's award-winning, it's on my portfolio, and now it makes me cringe. First of all, color contrast. Like, seriously, Diane? That would be easy to fix. So the way this works is the bee comes in, you decide which one it is, you drag it to the right one, you find you get it the right job. It's 10 points possible, and it counts down the longer. So, you know, like bar trivia, the longer it takes you to answer the question, the fewer points you get. So time-based element. So you've got color contrast, bam, exclusionary. Drag and drop, exclusionary. Countdown timer, the longer it takes you to either mechanically do this course or process the information. Now, the reason I did the countdown timer was it was like that air traffic control. If I'm talking to you and I don't know me versus I, like, you got to make that decision. In fact, the title of this series is called Grammar at the Speed of Thought. right? So does that mean I can't have any fun? Well, making these colors a little bit darker, no big deal. That is not going to be a hard thing to do. I could do something where I turn off the timer feature. It could be a preference at the very beginning. You want to play in timer mode or not play in timer mode? It's a game. Why would I exclude people just because of that timer? And then all I'd have to do here is make, instead of them dragging the bee, I make it so that they have to click on either me or I, and the bee moves. That's all I'd have to do. Is it any less fun? If my colors are a little darker, I give you the option to turn off the timer, and you click on the me instead of dragging. Or if you can't use a mouse at all, you would tab and hit enter. So you don't have to, wait, I found it. Here it is. Hang on, let me get it on the other monitor. Here's the after. So the points stay at 10. This is worth 10, period. And now what you do is you either click it with a mouse or you press tab. And when you press tab, oh, this is the version where I don't press tab. Yeah, you click the button or you press tab and then enter, and the bee just goes to the area. Like, you can work around drag and drop. Now in Articulate Rise, their drag and drop, their sorting activity, which is drag and drop, is mostly accessible. There's still a few little problems with it, but basically it's it's the same concept. They tab to the correct answer and press enter, and the item moves. So they're close to their drag and drop being accessible. Okay. Good. What else?
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful.
Other questions?
What are some, I see the hand from Susan.
Thank you.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much. This has been so informative. I'm wondering, how do you, when you get approached by a potential client to do e-learning and you want to make it accessible, how do you build in enough time for the development of making it as accessible as possible? That's where I'm lost. I don't know how much time to build into my proposals. Because I know it could eat up everything, right?
Well, not everything, but it does take more time. Part of it is baking it in from the beginning. It will take you much longer to retrofit a course to be accessible than to do it as you go. So I would personally guess, assuming you're knowledgeable, trained, educated, like you know what you're doing. So not your first project where you're still figuring out what's what. But if you know what you're doing, I would say that making something fully accessible, separate from formal testing, maybe an extra 15% effort.
Okay.
When you look at the whole course, I mean, from the instructional design to the writing, to the building, to the testing. Now, if going through the testing, like testing everything with a screen reader, if the client has a tester and then you have to work through them with them to remediate any of the issues that they found. If you have a PDF that you're attaching, that also has to be made accessible. So you can add up to where perhaps, all said, it could be maybe an extra 20%.
Okay. And if you're brand new, like I did Captivate e-learning 3 years ago, and I've been out of it for so long. I've been doing facilitation and stuff since. And if I want to get back into it, I'm hearing you talk a lot about Storyline. I don't know Storyline. I have to get back up into some of these products.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I have to eat that cost, but how do I make sure that if I say to the client, okay, I will get this done for you by X time, how do I know I'm giving myself enough time even to get it done? Like, forget about the billing, but I just want to deliver.
I believe that Storyline is quicker to work in than Captivate.
Okay. Yeah.
So whatever your Captivate numbers are, start there, because you're gonna not be fast at first. But I find it to be much faster. Let me put in chat here a link for anybody who's Storyline curious. So back when the pandemic first happened and so many people were having to pivot so quickly, I did a webinar with a coworker called The Least You Need to Know about Storyline. So it's free, it's 2 hours, it's a couple years old. I'll put the link here in chat for you. So if you
Thank
just
you.
like the minimum, like I'm going to make a few slides, I'm going to make a simple click to reveal, I'm going to add a multiple choice, and I'm going to publish. Like that's it,
Yeah.
like the least you need to know. So I will put that in chat for you right now if you are storyline curious. But please don't think that that is all you can do in storyline.
Okay. Thank
Storyline,
you.
according to eLearning, or according to Learning Guild research, their last authoring tools report came out in the fall of 2020. Storyline by far had the biggest market share, something around 69% in a survey where people could select multiple tools. Captivate came in around 25, something like a big difference. If you're going to get, I'm sorry, we're going off topic, but sometimes I can't help myself. If you're going to hitch your hitch to a star, don't hitch to Captivate right now. They are doing a massive revamp. It's called Project Charm. They've been teasing it for over a year, saying it's almost in public beta. It's been a year and a half. It's still not in public beta. So I don't know when it's coming out, but it's from what I've seen, there's been some sneak peeks. It's completely revamped interface. So I personally would be hesitant if I had to relearn software to go relearn Captivate now, because you might have to relearn it all again in 3 months or 6 months.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You bet. And the current version of Captivate is pretty wonky in terms of accessibility. And I do not know if they have prioritized accessibility in the new version. I have not seen it one way or the other, but they've got a pretty big government client base. So I'd be surprised if they didn't prioritize it in their new version.
Great. There's a nice comment in there from Abby Susan about UConn learning.
Oh, thank you, Abby.
And then also, I would suggest that you hook up with eLearning Heroes, because they do those challenges. And those challenges will reawaken skills, even if you were a Captivate user. So those skills that you have developed using Captivate, a lot of those are transferable. Just the use of your imagination and creativity. And so then you can practice the skills that Diane has brought to us today, you know, and ask the community for further assistance.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would be curious, Diane, as to what other common interactions do you see in e-learning programs other than perhaps the drag and drop that, you know, we use all the time, but we don't really think about them as being, you know, barriers for people.
Anything that involves interpreting an image is challenging. So one of the things that we use a lot is what's wrong with this picture? Meaning what's wrong with this person's personal protective gear? What's wrong with this email? What's wrong with this office setup for information security violations? Where you're asking them to scan this image and find problems. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm saying you have to do it very thoughtfully. So one of the things we have not talked about is alt text, because I was going for things that you can do quickly, and alt text takes some time. So what is alt text? Well, let me go to, let me pull up one of my storyline courses. So if I have, and this is a non-example, by the way, look at my color contrast issues. If I can't see it, I'm using a screen reader. The screen reader is automatically going to read any text to me. But this image, a screen reader is not AI. Screen reader does not know what that image is. And so as the developer, I'm going to put in a description of it. And that description is going to be what the screen reader picks up. So I have to put a lot of thought into what I'm going to put as that alt text. So if I have a what's wrong with this picture scenario, I have to decide how I'm going to describe that picture. And it can be challenging. So let's say it's an information, actually, you know what, if you'll bear with me for just a second, I have an example I can pull up. One moment, please. This is from my storyline accessibility course. Is this it? This is it. Yep, here we go. So here we have a, let me zoom in. This is a what's wrong with this uniform scenario. It's from a very old course, and so the picture is awful and grainy now. It's my stepdaughter, Allie. She's like 35 now. And so if I just have a click on the 5 issues, then I'm assuming you can see the image. So instead, I have put the little hotspots around it. I have to decide what to say about it. And that can be tricky because, for example, her shirt is dirty. So if I just put alt text that says dirty shirt and all you hear is dirty shirt, kind of gives away the answer. Whereas if you were using your eyes, you may or may not notice that. And so it's a bigger lift. Some of that's just going to happen. Like I can't think of a way to write around that. A white shirt with a strange gray area. Like, I don't think that's going to be clear. So I think that one's is going to be a bit of a gimme. But even things like the name tag, I could say non-compliant name tag. Well, no, that's bad alt text because I'm unnecessarily giving away the answer. But instead, I can phrase it just like phrasing any good distractor. You don't want it to be super obvious. So I could say personalized name tag with our handwritten name tag with some embellishments. And so if the teaching point is, nope, only use your standard issued, well, you still have to remember that that's what it is, but I haven't come out and said non-compliant. You know, I can say large hoop earrings and either, you know, yeah, I'm calling it out because visually you might forget to check for earrings. The fact that there's alt text about the earrings kind of gives it away. So then the other thing you might want to do in a case like this is put in true distractors. So I should call out something that's allowed, because if everything I call out is a mistake, well, I'm giving you away the answer. So why don't I flag a few things that are okay? Now, granted, in this, like rings or nail polish, those are both allowed. Well, if you are using your eyes, you're probably looking at the hands and going, yep, that's fine, that's fine. You considered those rings and you considered that nail polish with your eyes. So let somebody do it through a screen reader as well. So can you do visual activities? Yeah, but you have to be really, really thoughtful about it. I'd also be careful about a matching activity that has too many choices. Because if you're doing them, let's say I have 10 states and 10 state capitals, and you're using your eyes, you're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, trying to make your decisions. If you're using a screen reader, you're having to put all of those in working memory. Like I can't process 10 on one side and 10 on the other and try, like it just would be really hard. So I personally try not to do matching activities with more than about 5 or 6 items. And in Storyline, you would need to use the drop-down version, not the drag and drop version of matching. And Taz is asking, can you use hotspots and have alt text? Yes, what you might have to do, I'm trying to remember now, for a long time, hotspot couldn't have alt text, and so you would have to use a transparent shape and treat it like a hotspot.
Yeah, that's just, I was curious how, like, if you were targeting those items on the image,
Yep.
How you were getting them to tab through it.
Yep. Yep. And just like I would with the person using a mouse, is I'd have to put a hotspot over them, whether it's the official hotspot or a transparent shape.
Or a transparent shape. Okay, cool.
Good. Other questions?
As far as your own personal journey and understanding accessibility for instructional design and learning and development, what was kind of like your aha moment?
Great question. I think one of my biggest aha moments was when I sat down next to a woman who uses a screen reader in her real life and watched her take one of my courses. And then anytime I have a chance to observe somebody test my work. So that was a case early in my journey where we hired somebody. We made a course that we believed was accessible because we'd studied all the things you're supposed to study. And then we paid a woman who is blind to take the course, and I watched her take the course. And the first thing I did on the course is we had some accessibility preferences. We were very proud of them. She flew right through them. Like, what? Why didn't you turn on the accessibility preferences? I didn't know what they did. And I didn't want to cede control. So I've changed my language. So it's about learn about accessibility preferences so that they know all they're doing when they click that link is to go learn about them and not actively enable them. A number of our clients have gone through formal testing, and sometimes the testers use assistive technology in their own lives. And anytime I get feedback from someone who uses that technology in their life is really helpful. Things like adding alt text to a close button. Let's say you have a click to reveal activity and you have a close button for everything you pop up. And I was watching this person and he was really good at narrating what he was thinking at any time. And he goes, close what? And a close button. Close what? Well, I know it means close the layer. If you can see, you can tell it means close the layer. He doesn't know whether it meant close the course, close the browser. Like, I never would have guessed because I don't live that life. So I always learn something when I interact with somebody who's going to be impacted by the choices I make. And if you don't know anybody who can do some testing for you, most universities have an accessibility office, and you can probably find somebody there that you can hire to do a little testing for you and give you some feedback.
I think that's great advice for development in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't you?
Yeah.
Make things bigger, make things shorter, make things clearer, designed with the human in mind.
Mm-hmm. Most things that you do for accessibility will benefit all learners.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's
Just
just
like
a mindset, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Shannon, you and I were talking that before everybody else came in. It's often called the curb cut effect. So back in the day, the accessibility community lobbied for sidewalks to have those cutouts at the corners so that wheelchairs could go up sidewalks. But it's good for people with strollers, and it's good for people with luggage. And it's the number of people who use closed captions on TV shows who are not deaf or hard of hearing is very high. And if you've ever watched Broadchurch and tried to watch it without closed captions, you have no idea what that lieutenant says. I mean, my gosh, it's impossible. So yeah, everybody can benefit when we make our courses clearer and easier to use and easier to understand. Okay, well, my closing thought, another question?
I don't know if we have enough time. My question was going to be around the business case. So when we are attempting to move the needle and when it has to become an actual conversation with a client or proving to a decision maker that, again, it's the right thing to do. And even if it does necessarily add on a little bit of time, if we're baking it into the beginning, right, where we're changing our standard of how we go about doing things from the beginning. Do you have any thoughts or advice on ways that we could have this type of conversation where we're not, where we're trying to meet our stakeholder or decision maker where they're at? So we're using their language and we're trying to indicate to them, the business case for doing this.
Great. One thing to do is don't ask a question that you don't want the answer to. Don't ask a question that's easy for them to reject. So if I were to say, hey, can we make our courses fully WCAG compliant? That is an easy question to say no to. So don't ask that question. Instead, ask the question of, I want to make sure that everybody, regardless of their ability, has the opportunity to get better at their job. So can you help me work through some ways to make sure that we're fully equitable in our professional development opportunities? Like, that's a question you can't just easily say no to. That doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get what you need, but phrase it in terms of course you want this. How can you not want this? You'd be a monster if you didn't want this. And also frame it up as part of what are probably larger DEI conversations you're having in your organization. Make sure ability has a seat at that table. So you can tie into that, say, I know we've got a lot of initiatives around DEI, and one of the things I want to make sure is that we have an equitable professional development environment. I want to make sure that everybody here has an equal opportunity to get better at their jobs. And we set some time to go over what I'll be implementing.
Mhm.
So that's also called the assumptive close. I'm using language assuming the answer is yes.
Yes.
Now, there are different ways, in terms of do they have to. So in the US, Section 508 of the Workforce Rehabilitation Act says that government agencies must do this. There's no official formal super duper law that says private organizations do. However, it does fall under Americans with Disabilities Act in that you're not allowed to discriminate. And if everybody else gets to get better at their job and you don't, how is that not discrimination? However, ADA does allow for reasonable accommodation. So some would argue, well, if somebody has a disability and can't take the course, they can come to us and we'll figure something out. Doesn't really feel equitable to me. There is case law that is gradually making it more and more of a requirement. There was recently a Department of Justice paper ruling, I don't know, not quite a law, but official, that finally said that if you're a public accommodation business like a pizza store, it was a Domino's case. If your store has to be ADA accessible, then your website does as well. That had never been formal doctrine, and now it is formal doctrine as of about 6 months ago, that you must. But that's for places where you have to, they need to allow you in physically. So the tide is shifting, and it's going to happen. It is only a matter of time before there's formal case law or formal Department of Justice or Department of Labor guidance. If you're in if you're in state, many states have their own requirements. If you're state government, I know California has even a teeny bit more strict than federal. And university, higher ed, and actually any K through 12 or higher ed has their own laws as well. I think it's a little bit more cut and dry with universities as well, that some of it's required. Corporate, there's still a little bit of a wiggle room. Just ask a question that doesn't emphasize them.